This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. In an attempt to end the government shutdown, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell plans to bring President Trump's latest proposal to a vote this week. He announced it in a special address Saturday. The proposal calls for $5.7 billion for a border wall, but it includes giving a 3-year extension for DACA recipients.
In order to build the trust and goodwill necessary to begin real immigration reform, there are 2 more elements to my plan. Number 1 is 3 years of legislative relief for 700,000 DACA recipients brought here unlawfully by their parents at a young age many years ago. This extension will give them access to work permits, Social Security numbers, and protection from deportation, most importantly. Secondly, our proposal provides a 3-year extension of temporary protected status, or TPS. This means that 300,000 immigrants whose protected status is facing expiration will now have 3 more years of certainty so that Congress can work on a larger immigration deal, which everybody wants.
What is a genuine humanitarian and security crisis on our side?
Vice President Pence defended the president's plan, calling the measure a bipartisan effort based on talks with Democrats. While several Republicans say they're on board with the plan, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi called it dead on arrival, spelling out her disapproval before the president finished his speech. Democrats plan to counter with $1 billion for border security. And joining us now with more on this is our international correspondent, Gary Lane. So we know that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer say no deal to open the government, essentially. But is there some willingness or movement here?
Well, definitely not from them, but from some rank-and-file Democrats, there is some movement. And we saw Jim Clyburn. He is the majority whip of the House. He's from South Carolina. He recently said, look, maybe there should be some back and forth here, suggesting negotiations. Of course, the Democrats would like to see the government open first, then the negotiating, but there's a lack of trust. The president doesn't trust them. They don't trust the president. But also, some would also like to see amnesty for people who are here illegally in this country. The president said, and I want to read from his latest tweet, or one of his latest tweets, no, amnesty is not part of my offer. It's a 3-year extension of DACA. Amnesty will be used only on a much bigger deal, whether on immigration or something else. But that suggests that he may be willing to talk about amnesty.
Well, Schumer and Pelosi have said that they don't want to fund a border wall, but there are reports they've supported this in the past, so why don't they give the president this now?
Well, I think they don't want to give him a political victory. And, you know, we're entering this 2020 presidential season. We just saw Kamala Harris announce that she's running for president. So they know that there will be a big battle over Hispanics. They know that the majority of Hispanics do not support a border wall, so they're not going to support a border wall. But the president is growing in popularity with Hispanics. His latest, the latest poll from NPR shows that he has 50% support, and that's up about 19%. So a big battle over Hispanic voters coming up.
All right, here we sit, day 31 of the shutdown. What is the president doing to at least ease the sting of this partial government shutdown?
Well, he's calling back some furloughed workers, IRS workers, over 40,000 of them, to process IRS tax returns. In addition to that, FAA and FDA inspectors, some Department of Agriculture workers. So he wants to see them come back, but they don't really want to come back if they're not getting paid. So coming later this week, the president is going to sign legislation that will give them at least back pay.
All right.
That may be an incentive to come back.
What is likely to happen in the days ahead?
Well, we shall see, but I think what's going to happen, Ephraim, as this drags on, as we see more of the federal workers not receiving their paychecks, another one's coming up where they're not going to get paid. I think it's this Friday. If that happens, if this drags on, the Democrats are now going to be blamed for this. Of course, most people said, look, the president's responsible because he said he was responsible. But I think as it drags on, they're going to start blaming the Democrats for not negotiating, for not compromising. Most Americans would like to see our Congress compromise.
Yeah, and we'd like to see the government back up and running again.
Yes, you got it.
Indeed. Gary, thank you so much. U.S. officials are planning for President Donald Trump to hold his second summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The White House said Friday President Trump and Kim Jong-un will meet in late February. The two met for the first time last June in Singapore. Officials did not give a specific date or location for next month's summit, but sources told the BBC the meeting may possibly take place in Vietnam. South Korea said Saturday it welcomes the summit and hopes it will be a turning point to bring about peace and the complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. Much of the nation finds itself in a deep freeze today. The Arctic blast follows a deadly winter storm that left more than a foot of snow in some areas. Mark Martin is on this story.
The huge winter storm that pounded much of the Midwest and Northeast is moving off the East Coast. In its place, bitterly cold temperatures. The snow and ice resulting in dangerous travel conditions over the holiday weekend from Missouri to Maine. This morning, hundreds of flights canceled and more than 1,100 delayed. This on top of more than 3,500 flight cancellations over the weekend. The travel obstacles could continue into tomorrow.
They're doing everything they can to clear the roads before the freezing comes, because we don't want that turning into black ice.
When it comes to road travel, officials urge drivers to give snowplows room to do their job before the snow turns into dangerous ice.
We almost went off the road a couple of times.
The storm turned deadly in Connecticut when a subcontractor was killed while repairing power lines. In Kansas, a snowplow driver died when his vehicle turned over. And in Vermont, where 2 feet of snow fell, the wind chill is predicted to be 40 degrees below zero today. Vermont is by no means alone. A big part of the Northeast and Midwest are experiencing dangerously cold wind chills. Mark Martin, CBN News.
A student accused of racism in an alleged confrontation with a Native American at Friday's March for Life says he did nothing wrong. Nick Salmon was among a group of students attending the march. Native American Nathan Phillips was also there for an Indigenous Peoples March. The students were seen chanting and laughing as Phillips drummed. The video was shared on social media and went viral. The students were condemned for their actions, but Sandman, who was shown standing in front of Mr. Phillips smiling, says he was only trying to calm things down in the midst of the chaos. Both Sandman and Phillips say they were trying to calm things down between their groups and a third group affiliated with the Black Hebrew Israelite movement who was allegedly yelling negatively at both groups. Salmon responded to all his critics on social media, writing, "I'm being called every name in the book, including a racist, and I will not stand for this mob-like character assassination of my family's name." CBN's team in Washington, D.C. will be taking a closer look at the video that has gone viral and diving deeper into what really went on during that event on today's Faith Nation. You can watch that right here. It's on the CBN News channel. Israel closed its Mount Hermon ski resort after Iranian forces in Syria launched a ground-to-ground missile at it. Israel responded by pounding Iranian targets inside Syria. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl is on this story.
The IDF said its fighter jets struck Iranian Quds forces' military targets in Syria and Syrian aerial defense batteries, and released this footage of 2 of the strikes. This map shows Iranian and Syrian sites targeted outside of Damascus. The IDF said it had hit a munitions storage site and an Iranian intelligence site and military training camp. The strikes came in response to an Iranian-launched rocket at the northern Golan Heights where the Mount Hermon ski resort is. Israel's Iron Dome intercepted the rockets, and Israel closed the ski resort. Israel's foreign ministry tweeted, "Iran's attempts to entrench itself in Syria and endanger Israeli lives will not be tolerated." Earlier, Syria said Israel had carried out missile strikes, but its aerial defenses had thwarted them. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who was on an historic visit in the African nation of Chad, said Israel's policy remains firm.
We have a set policy to harm Iranian entrenchment in Syria and to harm anyone who tries to harm us. This policy doesn't change when I'm in the country, and it also doesn't change when I'm making a historic visit to Chad.
In response, Iran said it was ready for war that would lead to the destruction of Israel. Israel's intelligence minister said the airstrike sent a clear message to Iran. The IDF took responsibility publicly and immediately for the airstrike, signaling a shift in policy away from its usual ambiguity. That could indicate that Israel is ready for an escalation. In a telephone briefing, former Israeli National Security Advisor Yaakov Amidror said Israel is ready for action.
Israel was very clear about it. We are ready for escalation. For us to stop the Iranians from building the independent Iranian war machine in Syria is so important that we are ready to go to something bigger than that if will be needed.
For now, it's quiet, but it's not likely that Iran will abandon its goal of the destruction of Israel, nor will Israel let that happen. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
At least 12 people are dead after the Taliban coordinated an attack on a military base in Afghanistan. According to an Interior Ministry spokesperson, a suicide car bomber struck this base first. Then insurgents opened fire at Afghan forces. Most of those killed in the attack were military personnel. 30 others were seriously hurt. At least 2 Taliban fighters were killed by Afghan troops. The Taliban has claimed responsibility for the attack. It is the latest in the almost daily assaults by the extremist group. Pope Francis is scheduled to visit Panama this week, and he's signaling the immigration issue will be a central theme during his visit. This visit comes amid the latest caravan of Central Americans winding their way toward the U.S.-Mexico border. All along the way, migrants have been relying on a network of support from church-run shelters. The shelters providing them with hot meals, a place to sleep, protection from the cartels, and even advice along their journey. There are about 80 church safe houses along the route across Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. The church has not always fully supported efforts to aid migrants, but Pope Francis continues to place emphasis on what he says is a fundamental Christian teaching of welcoming strangers. Coming up, a new report details the top 50 countries where Christian persecution is at its highest. We're going to bring you that story when we come back and see what's being done to make a difference next.
CBN presents The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
We're going to talk about some of the incredible promises God has made to His children.
In Pat Robertson's newest teaching, you'll discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation, and see amazing stories of God's promises in action.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Break free from stress and despair.
The Lord doesn't want you to live in fear, but to know the rewards given to those who love God.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Open Doors USA has released its annual World Watch list of the 50 top countries where Christians are being persecuted because of their faith. The nonprofit organization named North Korea as the worst place to be a Christian, a position it has occupied now for the last 18 years. Afghanistan then coming in second and Somalia placing third. The total number of countries having extreme persecution levels is now 10. The list also went on to include Syria, China, and Turkey, with communism and Islamic oppression being a common theme for the source of the persecution. The organization defines persecution as any kind of hostility one experiences for simply following the Christian faith. This includes not only physical actions against Christians, but also hostile verbal language and attitudes. Joining us now to shed light on this topic is the president of World Relief, Scott Arbeiter. So, Scott, were there any surprises on this list?
From, I think, every name on that list is not a surprise, but it's still hard to see because we know that in each of these countries, whether they're number 1 or they're number 50, people who want to be followers of Jesus are at risk. You probably took your family to church. I went to church with my family yesterday. Most of the viewers here will have done so. We did so without the fear of losing our freedoms, our jobs, maybe our children, our lives. That is not true for many of the people in this list of 50, particularly for those who are in that extreme list.
Does the list show any growth or change as far as these countries are as acceptance, any improvement?
I would say at this point it's mixed, but sadly I think what we would see is that among the countries there is more repression in some of the top 10 states. And some countries who had not been in that list before, for example, India, have now moved into the place of the 10 most extreme nations with the greatest persecution. And that means that millions of people are living a life that is marked by fear.
Open Doors USA, the report states that in 2018, the U.S. welcomed 73% less Christian refugees from the 11 countries experiencing the most extreme persecution since 2016. What can the church be doing to respond to the needs of Christians around the world and when we're seeing these numbers?
Well, I think Open Doors does a great job of calling us to pray and to be engaged. And that probably is the most significant single act each one of us can do every day. But beyond that, there really are things that we can do in terms of raising our voice on behalf of our persecuted family around the world. We have brothers and sisters who share the same love for Jesus that we do, and they need to know that they're not forgotten. They need to know that we're willing to raise our voice and advocate for a greater compassion in our own nation to receive more of them in. As you pointed out, Ephraim, only 1,225 persecuted Christians were admitted in 2018. That is down 73%, but it's even more marked in other areas. For example, Syria. And we had really hoped that with the president's announcement, even on CBN, of his deep desire to meet the needs of persecuted Christians, that we would have seen an improvement there. Actually, only 9 persecuted Christians were admitted into the U.S. from Syria in 2018. That's down 90%. And from Iran, where there's tremendous oppression of persecuted believers, that total was only 7 in the entire year. That's down 99% from 2 years earlier. So I think as believers, we need to be aware. Absolutely. We need to be willing to speak into it, and we need to offer a greater welcome.
All right, Scott Arbeta, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Still ahead, a look at acts of service on this Martin Luther King Jr. holiday and take a look back at the history of the first civil rights given to African American generations ago.
Parents, the Superbook Bible app is a great way to get your child reading the Bible because in today's busy world, we can use some help. The free Superbook Bible app has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos, discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible app, available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I Wills of God, the latest teaching from Pat Robertson.
Churches across America help celebrate this Martin Luther King Jr. Day with acts of service. The Christian Post reports churches like Cross Church in Springdale, Arkansas, use the day to help others. It posted a picture from the church of volunteers handing out blessing baskets. 11 years after MLK Day became a federal holiday, it was designated by Congress as an official day of service as well. The National and Community Service website make it a day on, not off. It helps groups plan their volunteer work and to get others involved, and do it all year long. Before struggling with civil rights, America fought a brutal civil war over slavery. As we approach Black History Month, we bring you a closer look at the events surrounding the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which abolished slavery. CBN's Charlene Aaron tells us thousands of men and women, black and white, risked everything for freedom.
March 30th, 1849, a box arrives in Philadelphia with fugitive slave Henry Brown inside. Shipped from Richmond, Virginia, 27 hours earlier, he escaped with help from men on both sides of the racial divide.
The Underground Railroad was collaborative. You needed partners, you needed blacks and whites working jointly together to help people escape from slavery. People have seen the Underground Railroad as the first integrated resistance movement.
Anyone involved faced great risk. If caught, slaves were severely beaten and in some cases executed. Free blacks were sold into slavery. In the case of Henry Box Brown, he got away. But the white man who helped him served over 7 years in the Richmond Penitentiary.
If you assisted someone to escape from the Underground Railroad and you were white, you were seen as a far greater threat than a free black or an enslaved person. And so the punishment was extremely severe. In 1850 and 1860, you can look at the census records and see how many people were in the Virginia Penitentiary with the charge that they were helping someone try to escape.
But many were willing to take the risk, especially at the Anti-Slavery Society in Philadelphia. It was a key location in the Underground Railroad. Most fugitive slaves came from the Upper South, particularly Virginia and Maryland. The Anti-Slavery Society was founded in 1775 with members of both races. By 1838, they had their own building, but was burned to the ground after just 3 days, forcing them to go undercover. Society member William Still kept extensive records and published them after the Civil War in a book called The Underground Railroad. He gives examples of fugitives getting help in the form of homes, job training, money, even clothing.
By the 1830s, the northern factories were pumping out a type of cloth that was used in slave clothing. So you actually were branded by the clothing you had. So one of the first things you wanted to do once you got to the North is change your clothes.
Abigail Goodwin donated her best clothes. Still writes, her sister has often said that few beggars came to our doors whose garments were so worn, forlorn, and patched up as Abby's. Like a great many white abolitionists, Goodwin was a devout Quaker.
Originally, they called themselves Seekers of the Light, but they were given the name of Quakers because it was said that they trembled at the word of God.
Their battle against slavery came from core beliefs, originating with founder George Fox.
He came to the belief that there was that of God in every person. That's the wording that he used. There is that of God in every man.
Quakers signed the first anti-slavery resolution in the American colonies.
The most important thing about Quakers is that you live your values, and they tried to do that in every aspect of their lives, whether it was buying produce that was not made, grown or created by enslaved people, whether it was wearing garments that were not produced from cotton.
This is the Appoquinimink Meeting House, built in 1785. Just 20 square feet, it is presumably the smallest brick house of worship in America. But the Bible says, despise not small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin.
This was a preparative meeting, which meant that this was where people came weekly for their worship.
In the attic, where children met for Sunday school, is a hiding place for runaway slaves. Harriet Tubman is said to have stayed here. Tubman collaborated often with Thomas Garrett, a member of the Appoquinimink Meeting. Garrett helped over 2,000 runaway slaves make their way to freedom. Fined heavily, his home was put up for auction. The sheriff said, "Thomas, I hope you will never be caught at this again." Garrett's reply was typical of most agents in the Underground Railroad. "Friend, I haven't a dollar in the world, but if thee knows a fugitive who needs breakfast, send him to me." Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
A rare lunar eclipse nicknamed the Super Blood Wolf Moon appeared across the world Sunday. It was the only total lunar eclipse this year, and it came with a supermoon bonus. If you missed it, the Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles captured it all. The moon, earth, and sun lined up to create the eclipse, and it lasted a little more than 3 hours. Experts say there'll be 4 more eclipses this year, but there won't be another one like this one until 2021. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Have a great day.